Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. In today's VP guide, I'm going to look at landscape photography. So I'll break down some useful information and tips about that genre that might help you in creating your own landscape shots. The episode will conclude with the results of a landscape photography competition I ran on Twitter recently, but first let's get into landscape photography and what it's all about. Okay, landscape. So what constitutes a landscape photograph? Well, landscape refers firstly to the orientation of the camera. So for example, when you're playing a computer game, you're on a TV or a monitor, and that is landscape orientation by default. On the flip side, if you're using a phone to take a shot, that is portrait orientation. But why are they named those ways? Well, when you think of a landscape, you think of a wide, broad area of space with more width than height. But for a portrait of a person, the orientation has to change, because the subject matter is a different shape, being taller than it is wide. So it's really just a common sense way to name each variation of orientating your shot. For me, I first got into landscape photography when I was travelling around Southeast Asia, as it was a really great way to capture a sense of the place. You know what it's like, you're exploring, you get this excitement of experiencing something new, and landscape photos let you convey that in a kind of grandiose and epic way. Now, that feeling is also something that applies to computer games, in particular the abundance of open worlds we've got to explore nowadays. But what type of landscape photos are there? Well, for me, there are two distinct ones that really stand out. One is where you showcase the environment, the other being a shot where you place a person within that environment to create a journey or story within the photograph. Both of those varieties are well worth exploring. Like, try to frame a shot with your character in the landscape, then try it without them in it, and see how the difference looks from one to the other. For example, if you've got a travel book at home, have a look through it and you'll find lots of landscape shots. Some show off the locations, others do that, but also include travellers, because it gives the viewer an idea of what travelling through those places would be. You know, it makes you want to do it yourself. It makes it real to them, and that's why using people in a landscape can be very engaging. But again, you don't have to do that. Simply finding a nice location, framing it correctly, it can make for some of the most beautiful and serene shots you'll ever see. That is also one of the tricky elements of creating landscapes. They're pretty hard to manufacture because you can't create them, you have to be there at the right place at the right time. You can't really force it, but using computer games like Ghost of Tsushima here, it does make it a little bit easier. The game lets you alter the time of day, the wind, particle effects and the weather. And all these factors will really drastically change the atmosphere and mood of the shot. And I would always recommend trying out these different settings here, because you might find something truly wonderful. Okay, so you've found a location, framed it, etc. But what do you do with the focal range? Well, as a general rule for landscapes, you should use a wide open focus, as in make the whole shot in clean, crisp focus. So like an f-stop number of 22 or something like that. But if you're using a person or a point of focus and you want to make the background a little mysterious, then you can go for a lower f-stop. But I wouldn't go too low, as you will lose the definition on the landscape itself. In terms of some ideas, you can't go wrong with a nice warm sunset, especially by the water, because you get that nice soft reflection and warm glow. Mountains, lakes, forests, and varied weather, all these factors can make landscapes really stand out. So just try things out. There's no right or wrong way to do a landscape. There are tips you can take on board, but essentially it's about trying to capture the scene as you saw it and as you felt it. If you do that, then you can't really do any more. For me personally, I've never been hugely into landscapes unless I've been traveling. I guess because living in urban environments, it's harder to think about landscapes. When you're out in the country, it's different. So traveling and landscapes for me are intertwined. And there's something, a landscape gives off a sense of like serenity, or taking yourself away from the chaos of the cities and just having a moment to reflect in this broad landscape. Okay, now it's time for the competition. So there were 13 entries. Thank you to everybody who entered. So here's a quick slideshow with the entries just so you can have a look at them and who did them. Okay, so I think you'll agree there's some very nice shots in there. So let's go through them one by one. Okay, so let's look at each shot individually. So this one, here's the first one to look at. So first thing here I would say is slightly like a different context for a landscape, because usually there's a lot of clarity. Here, the person has used fog and mist to create a sense of atmosphere, which really works because you can still see the layers of mountains in the background and the trees and the sun. But having the fog, it gives it some sort of sense of mystery, and you've got a nice kind of little area on the right with the sort of shrine building and a bit of sort of a pathway, so it creates a sense of a mysterious kind of distorted journey within a landscape, so very nicely done. The next one, it's a very wide angled shot, so they've put like a frame on it to really accentuate the width of the shot. Nice use of pink and sort of sunsetty type environment, a bit of fog, haze on the lake, a little horse there, pathway on the left. You know, there's lots going on there. It's kind of very interesting, nice bit of colour, you know, nice little shot there. The next one, very blue. First thing you notice, the colour really snaps out at you. That's what you get with nighttime landscapes. Nighttime landscapes are quite tricky because, you know, you've got to deal with light, but you've got a nice moon, reflection on the water. That really does add something. Nice bit of mist on the water in the woods. Two very cool buildings, and it's just got a nice kind of serenity to it because of the water element also adding a sort of a calmness to the shot. Nice a smoothness to the lower half. Now this next one, this is quite different to all of the others because this uses, I would say this is a landscape, but it's also very good at because it captures motion as well, which is always tricky. But you've got that nice sort of motion of the water there, the rippling sort of waves. There's a bird in there. It's got, you know, it's kind of a chaotic sort of pathway through the image, but it's really interesting how they've captured this. Nice tree in there, gives it a little bit of context, you know, without the tree. Perhaps wouldn't have as much interest, but it gives it a sort of focal point, sort of a marker you can kind of use as a gauge for what goes next. Follow the pathway down the right. Very nice. Next one, this is a landscape, but this is quite a narrow one, so it just shows you don't have to do landscapes being super wide. You can do them more tight as long as they are conveying some sort of atmosphere of the place. First thing I would notice is the colour. Possibly a filter that's desaturating a little bit. You've got green in the leaves, but there's almost like a semi-black and white feel about it. Nice silhouetted trees, silhouetted shrine elements, bit of flower around the sort of lower left part. But it's really the fog and the mist again that, you know, fog and mist is something I love photographing in real life, but it's very difficult to predict. In this game, it's great because you can kind of manufacture it, and it's really what it does. It just adds mood. It adds atmosphere to the shot, and this is a very atmospheric, interesting kind of almost a little bit eerie shot. Very nice. Next one. Now this is different to all the others. This is more like an aerial shot. When I first look at this, what do I think of? I think of being in an aeroplane going somewhere on holiday. It's that kind of look out the window landscape that you're leaving home and you're going somewhere else, or vice versa. Very broad, you know, you've really got a wide array of the land. So this is, it's almost like a satellite shot, which is kind of interesting to achieve, but very nicely done. Lots of detail. I mean, there's so much to take in there. It's kind of bewildering almost. But again, really interesting sort of perspective on a landscape. Next, this is another very wide one. Now, first thing I noticed, this is very bright, very snappy with the color. A nice white layer at the bottom with those flowers. You've got the yellow trees, you've got a little bit of mist in the middle, and the blue skies and the sun on the left. So like, if this is one, if you squint your eyes and look at it almost out of focus, or you can kind of see it like bars of color. So it's very colorful, very nice and sort of serene and clean. Next one, well, this one's very striking, mainly because of the light source and the trees. So you've got these very eerie, silhouetted trees, look like they've been burnt down. You've got sort of maybe the sunrise or sunset on the horizon. Again, mist and smoke and fog. So many shots in this one have that, and that's a good choice. It distorts the image a little, but that doesn't matter because it doesn't completely ruin the focus or clarity. But it really, what does it do? It adds a layer of atmosphere and mood. Really like the blue colour with that thin strip in the middle of a little bit of an orangey, pinky, peachy colour. Again, it's a nice one. If you squint out, you can see the kind of the colour variations, but also the trees make it. The trees give it something like an eerie disposition, and another really nice shot. Next we have this one. Now this is almost like a sort of a postcard. Very bright, nice yellow sort of arching flowers going through the shot like a pathway. A little bit of water, a little bit of mountains, some trees, some buildings. Very picturesque, very much like a sort of a picture you would see in a travel book. Like, come to this location for a holiday. I wouldn't mind, to be honest, because that looks very, very nice. Thank you very much. The next shot, now this is one that I was talking about earlier, where you can use a person in the shot to add value, to add story, to add narrative. First and foremost, you've got a very broad landscape because this is shot from a mountain, a high level, and you're looking down on lower levels of the environment. You've got lots of smoke going on, which really adds drama to the shot. So like the smoke, the mist, the depth, but it's, you know what it is? It's the pathway leading from the bottom left of the image into sort of a central point, and then you have the character on the horse. That makes you think more than just a landscape. It makes you feel like this is a journey, this is a story. Who's the person on the horse? Where are they going? Like, where in this broad landscape are they going into? So really, really rich and interesting. Next one, well, first thing, this is like really golden, rich colors, lovely sunset, you know, warm, orangey, yellowy, peachy colors. You've got nice silhouetted trees, a bit of mist. You've got the nature element with the grass. You've got I think they're deer running through the shot. It's really kind of calm, naturalistic, warm, you know, really, really nicely done. Okay, two more. So this is another very, very wide shot. Lots of color, a bit of smoke. You've got, again, it's quite a broad one. So this is another example of where you can really show huge amounts of the landscape. Nice use of like the yellow trees, the green, the water, very strong sunlight. So it's kind of almost like lens flare-y, and a little bit of smoke in the environment. Okay, final one. Now this is different to all the others because this, with the landscape, you generally see more of the environment. Now this is it's like a centrally focused landscape because there's two sides of the image. They're not really showing you much other than these archways that have been overgrown with what looks like ivy. The focus really becomes on the subject in the center and the pathway that they're looking up into the distance. It looks like you've got lightning, you've got some sort of pathway leading somewhere. So it's very storytelling, you know, mysterious, atmosphere, journey, you know, like a where are they going kind of thing. So it's it's like a sort of circular landscape within a landscape frame because the two side areas aren't necessarily showing you the landscape. But it's a really interesting combination of the two elements, you know, nicely done. Okay, so really nice entries. Now I've whittled it down to my final three, and here they are. So we've got the sort of almost monochrome, misty trees and shrine. We've got the one with the character on the horse walking down into that very wide landscape with all of the smoke. And then we've got the golden shot with the trees and the deer. So in third place is the golden coloured one by CRIT3X I think that is. It's very small on screen, I apologise. I'll put it on the screen so you know for sure who it is. I do love a sunset. I love the warmth of it. I love the kind of the naturalistic feel, the animals, the close kind of quarters to the blurry grass in the foreground. Really, really nicely done, so well done. That's third place. So the final two. Okay, so let's put them side by side and let's have a good look at them. So on the left, we've got the monochrome trees, misty, sort of eerie landscape. On the right, we've got man on the horse, journey, very broad, lots of smoke, interesting kind of layers. So again, let's look at both. So the one on the left, very moody, very atmospheric, very intriguing. You know, it makes you kind of want to explore what's through that pathway. But it's also quite scary as well because mist, fog, the eeriness of the colour, it makes you sort of hesitant about, oh, what's there? Is there danger ahead? So it's almost like a sort of, what's the word? There's a tension to the landscape, which is kind of interesting. So that, I mean, I do really like the atmosphere in that one. The one on the right is a great example of how putting a person in a shot can elevate the shot. Like, for example, if you took the person on the horse out of that shot, would it get in the final three? Possibly not, because it wouldn't have as much context. But by putting the person there, what they've done is they've created a story. They've created a narrative. They've created a path, a physical path, but a path emotionally where you're thinking, what's this all about? Where's this going? You want to kind of see this journey through. So that's another interesting example. So two good examples, one landscape with no person in it, one with a person in it. So they've both got their pros and cons. Now, if I had to choose, I would say for me, it's the one on the right because it does lots of different things. It's the landscape. You've got so much going on in that landscape, like little towns, trees, all sorts of things. You've got the smoke, which the smoke is very dramatic, and having the character on the horse ready to go through this sort of dramatic landscape, it's a very compelling, very engaging, and very sort of, it's a very rich image that's got a lot of layers of things to consume, not just the nice facade, but also a story within it. So second place goes to the fourth focus for the lovely black and whitey sort of mysterious horror vibes to that one, or like kind of mystery. And the winner is, let me just check the name, Bruno Calado. Well done, very nice shot. But thank you to everyone, really good standard. I appreciate your entry. It gives me an opportunity to feature a competition in this episode. I hope my insight and feedback was useful. If you want any more feedback, just contact me on Twitter. Always happy to help. So that was the landscape competition. Congratulations to the winner, but well done to everyone. Very nicely done. Okay, that's all for this episode of the VP Guide. I hope you found it useful and the information and advice helps you in the future. The next episode will feature cyberpunk and fashion photography, and that is also the subject of the next photo competition. So go and buy your ideal outfit in cyberpunk, but don't take the pictures yet because there will be specific conditions. But you know, you can do some prep work until I announce the competition on Twitter. Thank you for watching. Thanks for the competition entries, and I will speak to you next time. This is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you.